It's a day later, and after yesterday's absolute disaster, I thought I would spend a little bit of time probably looking at this central locking issue. Essentially, what should happen, this should fire the central locking. And what I was thinking was, actually, whenever the battery goes on, the central locking fires, and quite often that does result in a blown fuse. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to quickly get into the back of the car, check the state of the fuse, and see if that actually achieves anything. The battery's off. Changing fuses, I know that the central locking system is always going to be live because it's something that you can access without putting the ignition on. So I always feel it's probably appropriate to take the battery off. And as I go around the car, the fuse and the unit lives behind this rear carpet. And the carpet itself being, well, I don't know, pretty old really. It's got various poppers on there, some of them are popped off. But all I need to do is withdraw the carpet and gain access to the panel behind. And there we go, carpet withdrawn. And isn't it funny to think that actually in all the sort of nooks and crannies and spare spaces in cars is where you're going to find wiring and bits and pieces. My other car, which is entirely more modern and vastly more sensible, is exactly the same. In the front wing is where the water washer bottle resides, for example. So you can't actually get at the washer bottle, but you can certainly top it up from there. Make good use of all the spaces in a car that you can. Next step then is going to be to remove those two screws, one here, remove those, and you can pull the panel back. This fuse box, the fuse I'm looking for is not in there. That's for things like the wash wipe, I understand, and a few other things. What I'm looking for is a really big chunky fuse, which is behind here. And let's see, so screws are off. Let's see if I can just withdraw this by hand. And there we go. So, like I say, there's an ancillary fuse box. Those are the relays for the central locking. So I'm going to have a look at those while I'm here. And this is the controller for the central locking, and this is the fuse. If I have a look at that, actually, that hasn't blown at all. And it does blow from time to time. Specifically, when you put the battery back on, you must make sure that all the doors are unlocked, because it shoots a pulse through the entire system, and that initial pulse, for whatever reason, can actually blow that fuse. So, okay, this is not quite what I expected. That was originally a replacement part. I don't know whether I should try switching that. I'm not convinced that is the part that's at fault. I'm going to get these relays off though. I'm going to have a good look and see what's going on with them. I've moved myself into the boot. Actually, I decided this was much more comfortable than being sat craned over the back of the car. And yeah, I thought originally those top three. 1, 2, 3 pins were fine, but actually in roughing them up a little bit, I can see that they're returning back to a nice copper colour. So maybe they'd oxidised a little bit, gotten dirty or whatever. This whole thing is just covered in cavity wax though. It's not particularly nice to be working with. So yeah, I'll keep going. So they don't look too bad. I can't really get them much better than that. I've tried brushing them. I've tried using sandpaper. Not really getting much more than that, I'm afraid. So I'm going to start on the other side. I'm going to get a screwdriver, a bit of sandpaper in there, and keep going. The method I'm using for this is to take one of these thin screwdrivers and wrap some sandpaper around it. What I really quite like, I might have a look on the internet, is where there's actually like a screwdriver, but it's basically a brush end. I mean, that would be great for getting inside and whittling it around. Sometime later, and indeed several bits of sandpaper later, I'm getting all that a good clean. I've also cleaned up one of the relays, because I'm thinking, well, actually, if that has actually solved it, then if the relays are nice and shiny, then potentially one door will open as a result of all this. I'm going to get the power on and I'm going to see if anything actually happens. Alright, so that's done something. Lock. So you can hear it's trying to do something. That's actually unlocked now. But nothing is actually happening on the lock cycle. Interesting. Yesterday I thought the two relays open the door were actually to do with central locking. They're not. They're going to be for the window going up and down. So there's definitely going to be a second. Well, there's definitely a circuit that goes that turns the key on and then off. If it's the door, well, the other door has also got such a circuit. So what does the passenger door do? It's not actually doing anything. Okay, so what next? Well, I think that far door is actually clear. So maybe I could start tracing connectors from the door backwards to the control unit. Yeah, because what I'm also tempted to do is think, well, that control unit as well. You know, it says new and used on it. That was replaced from the parts bin. I wonder if that might have actually anything to do with this. But then, do I want to actually start just replacing parts willy-nilly? I don't really like doing that. I think I might go for the connectors. Those relays, they're connecting, they're firing, because the doors are actually moving on the unlock cycle. So it's got to be to do with the lock cycle. So maybe there's just a dodgy connector somewhere. I shall trace back through the car and find out where the next connector is. Oh, that was a surprise. The battery is still on. I happen to move this and there we are, we can just hear it click. That doesn't sound right at all. Something's not quite right in amongst all of this. I shall investigate further. Battery's off, but I'm thinking, I really don't like the idea of that just being able to fire off willy-nilly. That doesn't feel right or correct at all in just changing the plug over. I've got loads of spares. I'm going to go and get some out of the parts and bring them to the car. Previous owner's been very helpful with labelling up parts that I inherited originally in the car. This one says has been replaced, faulty, so back in the box. Second-hand spare, looking quite tidy there. This one looks pretty good actually. However, it's got these wires there that are a bit cut, which I don't really like the look of. So that's going back in there. And there's Seb's foot. Right. Well, I might put the original back on. That would have been in the car when it was manufactured. And then we have this part here. Alright, check this out. So, got the original units. This was originally on the car when it was manufactured all those years ago. Looks a bit gnarly, bit nasty. However, I go to lock the door, and well, it's done something. I go to unlock the door, and it's unlocked 2 of the doors. So I reckon that's just probably connections. But yeah, this is firing in the process. So okay, so that I think it's the controller. Must be the controller. Passenger door, on the other hand, not a sausage. So well, the passenger door used to be quite good. Never mind. Got a controller that's doing something now, so that's good. I think I might try that other spare as well and just see what that might do. Then I might mark on it as to its performance. Check this out. While I've been, every time I go and put one of these in, I always check the fuse to see what the state the fuse is in. And look what's happened. What someone's done to this one. What could the reason be for doing that? Bridging that fuse. Don't like the idea of that at all. Nonetheless, I'm just going to see what this unit happens to do. I also noticed that the control board, the circuit board on the back, happens to be red, which is quite quite interesting, quite fascinating, because the others are green. Is there a difference? Space pot difference? I can't see any differences there. Anyway, I'm going to get this red one on and see what it does. It's got a red unit on it, and wow, when I go to unlock it, well, seems like it's a little bit fiddly. I go to unlock it, and I can feel it push back against me. I lock it, I unlock it. It's I don't know. Wow, that's very strange. What's happening on the far side? That's not doing anything. Ooh. That was unexpected, I have to say. What I'm doing is opening the door. Anyway, I'm not so impressed with that unit. I'm going to put the other one back on. Put it back on. Actually, I'm going to give it clean first. I'm going to give it a good clean. And errata to my previous videos, I'm no longer convinced that these have anything to do with the central locking whatsoever. There's 3 of them. I reckon that these are sunroof and rear demist. Just pointing that out in case anyone's shouting at the screen and going, no Steve, no, you happen to be wrong. And that would explain why they're then going into the fuse box, because that's where the fuses for these things reside. This is purely therefore for the central locking. Just looking at that, that's disgusting though, isn't it? That's really grimy. And it's really weird how it just sort of fires just all by itself if I just happen to nudge it. Yuck. What's behind that? Oh, hang on. There's another connector behind that. But that's going into this. Okay, so that is the central locking, which then goes into this loom, which then goes back. At least that's nice and neat. That's really neat. That looks nice. I wonder where that then connects into. Anyways, I'm going to take this inside and I'm going to give this a nice thorough clean. So one control unit, the one that is going to go back in the car, ironically, it's the original that the car was built with. I'm going to clean the plugs up and give those a good shine. Again, I'll clean that fuse holder up. I might even take this apart actually. I might take one of the broken ones apart and see what it's like inside, because I'm curious like that. Gotta say, this is starting to clean up quite nicely. I took the label off and I'm left with all this sort of residue off the glue from what was on there, but that's not looking too bad. I'm giving these a good clean. That's a clean. That side's come out better than the other side. Yeah, that's really thick, but you can see I've actually started at the top there. What I've been using is, been using the end of this and just gently rubbing it over. Rubbing it over like so. Bit firmer when I've got 2 hands, and then using some kitchen towel, just wiping off the residue. Seems to loosen it. It's, it's looking nice. I want the car, if I'm going to put all this effort into doing something on the car, I want it to look nice afterwards. I bet the irony is I end up just going buying a new unit anyway off eBay, but hey, that's life. So this is the unit that was on the car, and it looks nice. It looks nice and clean. It said it was new, unused. This was in the parts bin that came with the car. Looking at the connector in there, that's quite nice. I know those are cleaned up. That earth strip, that's not too bad either. When I look at the one that I've shined up, it takes a little bit of a sort of a copper shine to it. But I'm gonna open it up because, for all of it's looking nice, I wonder what is inside, and I wonder if anything in that is, I don't know, failed or gone nuts or whatever. Well, that's interesting. I have limited idea what this actually does. What's that? Some springs, charges, wires, coils. Nice and clean though, isn't it? Can't actually see anything in there that would be amiss. If anyone knows electrics, it'd be very interesting to see what you think of this. Don't think I'm brave enough to touch anything in there though. I'm always worried about residual charges. I mean, I don't know if I'm worrying unnecessarily about these things, but I did receive a rather nasty shocker for a computer once, for an Apple II. That's always made me wary. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to put this back together again. To be fair, I can't help myself, so I've been thinking, how must this work? And what I can see here is a couple of contacts here, and that clearly snaps it shut, and that spring then pulls it back open again. So this must produce I'm thinking this must produce some sort of charge. It builds up the charge and then it discharges it, which then goes back out to the doors, putting on the I don't know, the actuators. Probably needs a very, very strong charge to do that. I wonder whether you know, maybe, I don't know, just cleaning up contacts, because you can hear, well, certainly on this unit you can hear things move. So you can hear that, but I guess if it doesn't complete the circuit, then they're not going to fire, because everything looks quite well connected. None of the electronics on here look burnt out or frazzled or anything like that. These capacitors, they're not leaking. I've watched enough videos of fixing old computers and seeing capacitors leak before, so I don't know about the pretty colours on this here. So yeah, and then what would there be two? That would be the other thing. So I might get another broken one out actually and just investigate still further. It's quite interesting, this. Is that the apparently supposedly faulty unit? What can I see here? Why would this be faulty? Got a bit of a crushed wire there. I don't think that should do anything though, should it? Contacts look, don't know, bit cleaner maybe. Can I zoom in? Oh, look at that. On whichever side. It all looks quite nice. I wonder whether I should be opening that one up actually, maybe give these contacts a bit of a clean. Interestingly, so this is the one that I opened first. You can see this discoloration there on that piece of copper. As pretty as it is, I don't know what that is about. Rather more absent on this one, but the flow of the copper, well, it doesn't look as strong. Got a capacitor out of place, but yeah, again, interesting. So yeah, must be some sort of, I don't know, what would you call that? Where's an electromagnet? I must pull these things together, create that circuit. Anyways, enough tinkering. I got a car to repair, car back to put back together again. Naturally, I couldn't help myself. I wanted to know why this one works and why that one doesn't. One of the things I've noticed, and well, the only discernible difference that I can see is this. Ooh, where's my top of my thing? Is this copper connector here? How it actually deviates from touching anything, and indeed it's not discoloured. Whereas this, I mean, what would it do if it touched something? It was actually moved out of the way. Where's this discoloration? I'm gonna look this up in a bit. That's the only difference. Just how that seems to be out of harm's way. Contacts wise, I can see tiny little blobs of solder actually on these contacts. There's a bit of actually down there. You won't be able to. I don't think you'll be able to see this, but down on the bottom one, the bottom contact, I can see it's I don't know, bit. I want to say sooty, like it's I don't know, burnt some dust maybe or something. I have no idea. Anyway, I'm going to get this back together again and back on the car. It's back together again. I decided to use the nicer of the cases from the other, well, as it said, the new and used unit, the one that was on the car that was faulty. So I'm going to bang this back on the car and see what happens. While I'm here, before I actually reconnect, I thought I'd actually have a look at the connectors. I've got numerous wiring diagram there, and I've got my various books out and so on, because I wanted to see how this works. And I can see that you can see there's two green. There's a green black going into one of these pin connectors. There's two green blacks and there's two blue blacks, and they go off to the keys. So that's the circuit for the key. And then you've got this green slate and you've got a blue orange, and that is the circuit that then goes off to unlock the doors. Black, as I understand, black and brown are to do with the earthing of the car or something like that. And then there's purple, and purple doesn't actually feature in any of my wiring diagrams. Now it goes into this connector, and then when I look at every single of these connectors, there's actually no pin for it. Entirely superfluous. And my understanding of purple was that's for lighting anyway. So I have no idea what that happens to be for. Anyway, everything is all cleaned up. Looks nice and sparkly. I am going to put this together and then try it. Last video on the phone before I lose charge. I haven't tried turning it yet. What happens? Okay. Let some doors open. So, okay. Feel that. Okay, well, let's try the other side. Alright, that connector's not really doing anything. Alright, well, there's a unit on there, which looks pretty. It's opening, which is useful. And now it's locking. Weird. And it's kind of catching inside the door. That's what I say. Oh, okay. All right. I think the door handle's got something to do with it. Anyways, that's enough for today. You thought this video might end, but it hasn't. This is a bonus video, for I took apart the red controller. A couple of things I noticed. At the top of this circuit here, it's got a lot of corrosion. I would imagine underneath this is probably the circuit track itself. I could get my multimeter on it and just see how that is faring or not. I don't know. Someone's been inside this before, by the way, because the screws were quite mashed. Obvious differences are colours and a little bit of some of those capacitors. Maybe it's a different make or something. Resistors all check out. They all seem to be the same. One thing I did notice is that the wires, which I guess then must be spliced at the plug end, for they change colour when they come into the unit, are actually the same here as they go in, which is useful because what that means is we can see that we've got open and close. So one of these circuits is going to be open, one's going to be closed. What else can I see? So these spring parts, which are I don't know, earthed? I don't know what the correct terminology is, but that goes onto the earth. Well, I'm going to call it an earthing point on the car. So that must be part of the closure of the circuit. That says basically, right, open, close. These must be the controls. Coming in at the top, we've got brown and slate. So yeah, they're they're going to be saying open, close. I can't remember. Yeah, open, close. Oh, I don't know. But I'm just thinking that maybe the ability for these things to work is basically down to the contacts on there. For these are, well, they top. These are dirty, ish. But this, if you remember, when this was on the car, it went absolutely nuts. And it felt like when I was turning the key, I was actually turning against a force. That could just be the key though. Anyways, hope you found that interesting. I certainly did. And that is the end of my video today.